Okay, hopefully that doesn't sound too bad. I've lost all my noise filtering stuff, but for some reason that doesn't work. So yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm just watching the broadcast thing and I'm noting that there's a little bit of background noise that shouldn't be there. But yeah, hopefully you can hear me now. Yeah, good evening all. Good evening to Zava Thrashmordor, to Shinobi, Dropped, Jodomo, Chris, Blamsmith, Del Kenobi, Ray Louderbeck, and I think that's everyone. If not, apologies. Good evening. It's IAE, and yeah, I'm sure you're already somewhat a body part deep in all of the IAE fun and goodness. But nevertheless, we're going to take a look. We're going to have a look at the Save Stanton stuff and talk about that sort of mission and how good that is, but we'll get that in a second. And we're also going to talk about a couple of bits that have come out from the IAE show that CIG are now doing, which is really, really cool because it's got all these extra details in it and all these extra sections that we're not used to getting and that are a lot of fun. So yeah, let's give that a go this time. McBadger's ASMR stream. I'm really hoping not can. I'm gonna see if I can fix this in the background because I think rather frustratingly with this there is a I think you can hear all my clicks because I'm not running it through the right thing. So give me a second. I'm just gonna see if this fixes it, and this is where it all goes horribly wrong. Stand by. Test. Hey, fixed it. Woohoo! Okay, so God knows what that was. Good evening, Sol. Good evening, Can. Yeah. So that I'm joining the academy. Does that make me a cadet? Says Lamsmith. Well, you've definitely joined something, or you definitely now are something. But hopefully now I'm just going to knock the volume back up to the right point on that, and we're going to take a look. And I, unfortunately, having not wanted to wear these too much, am now wearing these all of the time. So, oops. Yes, so let's have a look at the academy. Let's jump across. Ta-da, that works. Okay, let's do that one. Hey, we're all good. Okay, so IAE. Page 1 is the IAE Academy. I don't know how many people just kind of skipped over this. I did. I only know because Sol, Can, and Edison were talking about this in the Discord today. But basically, you've got to do a bunch of tasks by the 27th. So you haven't got long. You've only got like 6 days out, right? But you can get the in-game shirt white from IAE. Blam, I'm not going there, dude. Absolutely not going there. You can get your combat career kit. So this is aimed more at the starters, but hey, it's free stuff and it looks like it's permanently attributed to your account. So there's a bunch of things you can do. You can go do the tutorial. That's 1. You visit the IAE. That's 2. It doesn't say for every single day. It just says to visit it. Enter the show floor. So that's that. The combat. So you've got to go and do the tracker training permit certification, which I'd imagine a lot of people have already done, given how long the wipe's been around. But the patch has been around. But there you go. Do some hauling. So for this one, you've just got to do the opportunity for independent cargo hauler. Again, that's kind of like the entry one. And then maybe do some industry stuff. So that's either hand mining or asteroid mining. So yeah. So it does say you can do this one of 2 ways. So whichever way you do it, it's accredited, and then that's that. So yeah, that gets you some free stuff for your account. And that's that. And then they, do the normal let's sell stuff to people. Hey John, no worries, man. You are literally pretty much on time. Good evening to Walter. Hey, I am good to see you all. Some of the tasks were already completed in the past for many of us. Hauling cert, combat cert, some mining. Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like, you might have to go and do the tutorial again if you've still got access to that stuff. Yeah. It very much looks like this is for the new people to kind of entice them in, right? But we'll see. I still like the armor set. I still think it's a cool armor set. So let's go on then to day one. I'm going to go through them all in kind of sections. The Crusader, Crusader stuff with the Intrepid, and the war bond for that was, I think, I can't remember. What was the war bond for day one? Someone tell me. Whatever it was. But yes, I'm going to flick through and see if I can remember what it was from the list before anyone tells me, because you guys are on latency. It was the Intrepid, right? Or was it the Zeus? I can't remember. But yeah. So that's that. Intrepid's out. If we've got time, I'm going to risk giving this one a go in the at the end. So I've got the Intrepid. Thanks, Del. I'm going to go and have a look at it in the hangar if the whole thing holds up. And I'll put the new shiny paint on it and all that sort of stuff. It was the M2, you're right. It was absolutely the M2. So it was the M2 Hercules, which unsurprisingly is the more expensive of them, I think. Or the middle one, so it's not the A2, but it's more expensive than the C2. So 520 normal. And then obviously what they do is they revisit a lot of the war bonds at the end. Although whether it's the same ones or whether it's slightly different, it seems to change depending on which event you're on. No, I mean, there's no real standouts in here. I like the C1, so at the moment, the C1 is kind of my go-to daily driver. Maneuverable, looks good, great for... I've done a little bit of light combat in it, against the computer. Yeah, I find it quite a lot of fun. The C2, I've never been into the 2 series, the Hercules series. Never really been into any of that, like hauling to that extent. And bombing is for the RAF, so I don't do that either. Because, you know, I'm not the RAF, I work for a living. So yeah. Genesis, there's more to come on that, but I think that's going to get a little bit of a rework, just to make it look more in keeping with the Crusader aesthetic. And the Intrepid. I don't get a lot of the hate with this. I get that it's a kind of interesting external design. I understand why it winds people up like that. But I actually quite like it. But we'll come back to that in a sec. Yeah. MSR, look, it doesn't need me to sell it. I know a lot of people are a big fan of it. And then, excuse me, tried both of the Ares and got my bottom handed to me both times, flying the Safe Stanton mission, because those missiles do not want to break lock. So I managed to get away from one with boost, but they just kept doing it and I ran out of boost. So, dead. Good evening to Socially and AV as well. So yeah. Okay, so John Goodwin says, I had the hauling one done already despite only doing it when the patch first dropped. So it seems that you can have done them in any of the 324.x packs, not just IAE. Well, good. That's something for that then. Yeah. So that's that. Tumbrel, again, nothing kind of really shocking in the Tumbrel lineup. In fact, there's very little in the Tumbrel lineup. You've got the Cyclone in various different flavours, and then, unsurprisingly, the Nova, and then the bikes. I know it's going to die horribly. I still want to take the Nova up against the Valakar worm thing. I just want to go up with a squadron of tanks and just be firing tank rounds in it while running away screaming. But yeah, we'll see how that works out. That sounds like the content of a video, right? But yeah. We'll come back to the Intrepid in a bit, but I hear what people are saying. The general feeling is that the Intrepid is too expensive for what it is. I think it's not a combat ship. I think it more, you know, they've even said it's like a cargo starter, and I think the fact that it's got so much, the engineering terminal and stuff, it's obviously kind of like a microcosm of the game. So there's a little bit of combat, you've got an interior, there's the cargo stuff, there's the engineering stuff. It's almost like, you know, the game compacted down into one single-seater ship, which, I mean, I quite like. So that's day one. Then yesterday we had the Aegis Dynamics stuff, and the war bond for that was the Eclipse. Thank you, Ayum, for popping that in. So yeah, the Eclipse torpedo bomber, which you're paying tax there, you're paying stealth tax, fighter tax, and torpedo tax. So it is quite a pricey ship. Avenger, I know pegged by a lot, still the most valued starter ship in the game, it seems. Although the Cutter seems to be a close second. Gladius, and then the Variant, great. I know it said Valiant, I mean Variant. Although it's really just a paint scheme. Hammerhead, which is interesting because we're going to have a look at the 2 IAE shows that they did. One of the things they said when people say, "Oh, I don't understand why you would take a Hammerhead," we've got the answer. They've just shown us why you would take a Hammerhead, and it's in one of those shows. So bear with us on that. Idris and the Javelin, the mighty Javelin, and then Hokthua Nautilus as well. So, did I just do it? I did just do a Hokthua. I meant that in a bad way, not a good way. Not like the meme. Oh, God. Yeah, so Idris and Javelin, just crazy money ships. So, like that. Hey, Stack, good to see you. Hey, John, welcome in. But yes, so Nautilus is looking interesting as well. If what we've seen with the Polaris is anything to go by, all of these bigger ships are going to be looking really, really good. So that's good to see. The Reclaimer is the Reclaimer. It's been around so long now. It's really rehashing it. I love this ship. I've got it in my fleet. It's staying. It's not going anywhere. But I really am a fan of the Reclaimer. I think it's just a great industry toy. And then the Redeemer. Some people's favourites. It's interesting to see at IAE what they were saying about drop seats, because that changes that. Although someone in our Discord made a really good point that I now can't stop thinking about. In the Reclaimer, they got the decks wrong. The idea that you have the habitation closer to the ramp than the drop seats seems really, really weird. That doesn't make sense. It should be the other way around. Destroy, good to see you. Good evening. Yeah, and then the Retaliator, obviously we've lost the variants now of the Retaliator because of the modularity system or the module system that's come in, so you now just get the Retaliator. There are torpedo modules which those that get the Retaliator bomber will have, I understand. But yeah, and then there are cargo modules with it, and the next couple that we're getting, I think, is a dropship module or a drop seat module. And then we'll get something along the lines of a habitability module. So it's like better crew quarters, better living arrangements. So the Retaliator increases its range because you're not basically sleeping in the ship equivalent of a tent. So yeah, Jock Cop, good to see you. And then the Sabres, I really like the base Sabre. But the appeal of that obviously can be spread across all of those ships. I think it just looks mean and gnarly. But yeah, some really good ships. Aegis has got a crackingly large lineup. The last few or couple of ships, just before we get the last one, is the Vanguards, the Harbinger being the fighter one, the Hoplite being the dropship, the Sentinel being the electronic warfare, and then the Warden as well. Of these, I like the Sentinel because I think the e-warfare stuff's really interesting. There's an old article actually on the comlink that you can look for, and it kind of talks through a little bit about the jamming and all the spoofing and stuff that it can do, or what they were thinking about adding to the e-warfare suite. So that looks really cool. So Vanguard Sentinel is something, I'm thinking about, but I think that for me is going to be an earn-in game rather than go and buy. Warden is the good-looking one. Yeah, fair enough. And then the last one, the Vulcan, repair, rearm, refuel, making use of a lot of drones. Looking forward to seeing this in the game. It's one of the ships that I'm interested in on my chain of ships. So yeah, really looking forward to the Vulcan and what that can do. I think rearm, repair, refuel is niche enough that if you're interested in that sort of gameplay, I think you might be amongst a minority of players. So I think there'll always be a use for you, especially given what they've said over the last couple of days about things like the fact that even soft death ships are going to be able to be brought back to life with repair and towing and all that sort of stuff. And that will likely be preferable to just going and claiming a ship. So I think there's going to be a market for those sorts of ships in the future. Okay. And then Misk and Mirai. I know a lot of people are upset that we didn't see the Fat Fury, the Mirai ship, go for sale. There's clips of it kicking about. I don't know if you've seen them. I think it's in one of the IAE videos. But it looks like now that's going to be a 4.0 ship and not something that comes at IAE because it's not for sale. But yeah, so there's your Fury, and Pulse. And there's a Razor thrown in for good measure as well. So yeah, not a lot to talk about from the Mirai side. I know these have been done to death in like other videos and stuff, but yeah. Vanguards need deep love, says Rashmorder. They've been fully forgotten by CIG. Yeah, systems and travel, I think, is going to be a big part of that. The range that they're able to provide. Being able to go 2 or 3 systems away, strike and then come back, I think is going to be kind of important. But yeah. And then from the Misk side of things, your upgrade is the Freelancer Miss, which was a bit of an interesting one. Wasn't expecting that to happen, but that is what's happened. So that's where we are. 2 seconds. I'm just going to enable my streaming mode on Discord because it's making noises at me, and it absolutely shouldn't. Stop making noise, Discord. Where are we? Streamer mode. Click. There we go. So that's that. Okay. Misk has got some really interesting stuff, so I'm just going to pause here for a second and talk a little bit about upgrades and stuff, because it'll explain why I think what I'm doing with Misk at the moment. Misk is going to be interesting because it's got a lot of ships that I think are going to go up in value, and if you have the upgrade, whatever you paid for it at the time, you don't have to pay any more, obviously, you just get the upgrade. So it gives you the ability to ride. And that's why I have an Endeavour a CCU to the Endeavour in my fleet. The Endeavour's not going to come anytime soon. They've talked about the problems with it and how the modularity is going to be such a challenge, especially when the front module here actually detaches and comes away from the ship. This is going to be a long time coming. However, for $350, it's a hell of a ship, so I expect that to have quite a dramatic price increase. Expanse, start of the refining gameplay loop, kind of priced not too far off, $25 less than the Vulture, so another starter ship in that area, taking refining from the Prospector, or taking mining, from the Prospector, from the Mole, in those saddlebags, which interestingly are going to be coming in 4.0. So those things now are going to be detachable. You'll be able to put them into your warehouse as normal and move them around like any other cargo item, which is really, really cool. The Freelancer series, again, there's a lot of people for a very small ship, but I actually quite like them. I think they're quite fun to fly. Various different kind of cargo and armed cargo options, with the Miss being the one that you can upgrade to. So if we hit that very quickly, so you can see there now you get a slightly reduced price if you go up to the war bond stuff. So if we just have a look from $125, it won't cost anything kind of close to what it should do, which is no bad thing. Hull A, $90, Hull B, $140, Hull C, $500. That is a significant price jump for, between the second and third in class. So I've got a couple of upgrades to the Hull B. Again, I'm just going to ride those speculatively, and see where it ends up in price, because then all I've got to do is get myself to a Hull B at that price, and I've saved myself a huge, huge chunk of money. So yeah, there's a lot of cargo in that for the price that it is. It's almost double, I think, if not double, the Taurus for $60 less. So yeah. Hull C, Hull D, and then Hull E, the sort of things that are an absolute cargo hauling, loading and unloading nightmare. It's great for cargo hauling. It's going to be incredibly hard to get, that much cargo loaded and unloaded without some help. So yeah, it's going to be um, a challenge. But if you're dedicated, obviously there's no better ship for hauling bulk than the Holly. Odyssey exploration ship. Still unsure as to where this sits in kind of the exploration ships. You've obviously got the Carrack, which has that dedicated mapping room up top. So that looks to be more about jump points and that sort of stuff. The Odyssey, where that sits with its ability to refine, it looks like it's more about kind of sustainment, not having to come back and refuel. It can stay out longer. Any more than that, the speculation about it being like a ground exploration ship, we just don't know at this point. Prospector, yeah. And the Reliant series, there is one of these that I really quite like. I'll let you figure out which one it is, but I do quite like one of these because of its role. But yeah, fun two-seater starter ships, or starter ship, and then a couple of others. Also, the smallest of the science ships as well, the Reliant Sen. Yeah, fun. And then the Starfire and the Starfire Gemini. A nightmare of an FPS level crammed into a ship that is just. It's hell, basically, to navigate around inside this thing. I'm not a fan. Um, I'm a fan of the roll. I like the refueling thing that you can do at the back with the boom and all that sort of stuff. All that is really good fun. The rest of it, not so much. Not my thing. So yeah, we'll see. But we're all waiting on the interior to get a rework, because even CIG have said publicly that it was designed as an FPS level interior, not a ship with, living in mind. It is, however, a very interesting ship in terms of its role within a fleet. Because you need those kind of logistic ships that carry fuel, munitions, food, and all that sort of stuff. And what they can do is they can meet up with the fleet, offload all of that, and then head back. So the fleet has increased its endurance. The fleet gets to stay where it is, and the Starfarer kind of. And you can have a couple kind of leapfrogging each other to do that and keep a fleet in action. So yeah. Star Lancers, again, been done to death. They're not ships that I would go for, but I know they are popular with a lot of people, and it'll be interesting to see how the build turns out, the BLD, when we get that, the base building version. But yeah, at the moment, I think the biggest thing that strikes for me is the price difference between the two. It's almost $80 higher for like the combat version. But this makes things like the Valkyrie a very interesting proposition, because the Valkyrie now basically becomes like more of a combined troops and vehicles transport. Because why wouldn't you use the TAC, especially at its price point? So yeah, good evening, Shadow Girl. Good to see you. So yeah, it is the Mako Citizen Ninja. I'm absolutely loving the Mako, the Reliant Mako, which is the reporting one. It's got a camera pod on it, and I love the idea that players in the future could have some sort of like reporting role in the verse. Maybe even stream to the screens within the game if you so choose. That would just be cool. Very much similar to the way Grand Theft Auto does like reporting. That would be a very cool thing for them to do. But we're now talking a lot of speculation way down the line. Yeah. TAC will have a med base as Detroit. I'll pay that extra $80. Yeah, the med bay does seem to be a big draw for a lot of people. So yeah, some interesting ships going around, and obviously we are still only three plus manufacturers in ship manufacturers. There's obviously Tumbrel and Mirai thrown in there as well for good measure. Tumbrel being a different company, and then Mirai being a sub wing of MISC, is my understanding, unless they've gone and changed all that. So yeah, it could double up as surveillance as Blam. Yeah, I think it needed a little bit more kind of like stealth stuff for that, but you could be right. You could be right. Okay, let's have a look then, very quickly at the schedule. So the next thing we're going to see is the Gasak, Apoa, Banu, and Asperia. Not expecting much in there at this point. It's not Alien Week, and you know, even though there's some really nice ships like the Prowler that they keep showing, and I love the Talon as well. Yeah, there's not much in there. Robert Space Industries Day, the 26th, 27th, is just going to be gnarly. Everyone ever trying to pull out Polarises. Although, to be fair, there's lots of people pulling out Polarises right now, and you know the server seems to be managing. If you're not trying to do the Save Stanton mission, phase 3, it seems to be doing okay. So yeah. Argo Astronautics, Consolidated Outland, Greycat, and Kruger. Not huge amounts kicking around for that lot. We might see maybe a little bit more of the CSVFM. Maybe that goes to concept. Don't know. Drake Interplanetary, again, not expecting anything new there. Origin Jumpworks, and then Anvil. So there are a couple of things coming for Anvil that we know about. We've got the two variants of the Hornet, the Ghost and the Tracker. The Ghost being the stealth variant, the Tracker being like its airborne early warning, almost like a smaller AWACS sort of vessel, with a dedicated scanning suite and all that sort of stuff. And then they have teased a couple of times in freeze frames and stuff within the IAE show videos something else we believe is coming from Anvil. There was talk that this was finally going to be the long-awaited but never confirmed Anvil capital ship. We just don't know. There was talk that it would be about $800 and called the Paladin, which, funny enough, is exactly the same price and exactly the same name as a chair by one of the companies affiliated with CIG. So, we don't know. After CIG's antics with trolling the Raptor and all that fun stuff, I don't know. I don't want to get people's hopes up. Although, to be honest, I think I've kind of missed the boat on that. I think people are getting their own hopes up, regardless of what I do. So yeah. So let's have a look. Just going through a couple of the comments. Mako definitely has an interesting role. I want to get the Pioneer, says Wouter. F5 War it will be. Yeah, obviously with the Pioneer, especially after the rework, that's going to be quite interesting. That's the Consolidated Outland one. Again, a hull limited ship. I wonder whether they're going to up the number of ships that are available just for that reason, because it's going to attract a lot of attention now that we know that they're working on base building in the short term. Says the Valky's a bit expensive. I expect that ship to be getting super good armor in the future. Yeah, don't doubt it. And then one thing that I want to mention with Anvil, I'm going to leave to last because it's one of the ships that I've been talking about for a little while. John Goodwin as the Terrapin Medic. which I really like the look of. However, in my fleet, I currently have the C8R, I have a Nursa Medivac, I have a CCU chain up to the Apollo Medivac, which is one of the ships I'm really interested in. And given how close they are in price to the Terrapin, I just don't think I can justify the Terrapin. Even though it looks like it's the first of the ships that have been produced that looks like it's designed to go in under fire, get a high, get a hurt casualty out under fire with all its armor and everything else. It just looks like it's almost like the parajumpers, the combat search and rescue guys. It looks like it's straight from their playbook. So yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. Could there be any surprise ships coming we don't know about, says Sherigal? Possibly. I think it will be whatever this Anvil ship is. There's been a lot of picking. I'm not going to pull the images up because I don't do spoilers. And look, if you add together how many times people have been right with this speculation versus wrong, 9 times out of 10 people are wrong. Even when you delve on files and they do the they kind of pull files out with the deep mines and stuff. Misc Raptor is all I'm going to say. We thought it was, people were speculating that it was a fighter and everything else, and it turns out that it was a trolling trash truck. Lol. So yeah, I don't know. Whatever it seems to be the concept, we know that the concepts at IAE come with the last, generally tend to come with the last manufacturer. So if we are going to get something, we can expect it at that last one. Grand finale is when you tend to get the war bond stuff, and they throw a bunch of other stuff on sale, like armor sets and whatever else. So yeah, we'll see. And then best in show, bunch of skins for C1, Reclaimer, F8, and a couple of others. I forget which ones they are. So interesting you say that. Rash, we're gonna come to that. So the Connie rework that you mentioned, we're gonna talk about that in a little while. Connie needs air shield. Sorry, the Valk needs air shield to Rash. I'm not sure. We'll come back to that. Yeah. Picks are not spoilers. They're taking from IAE Video 1. Yeah, no, so it's not so much the spoilers, although I just wanted to throw that in there. It's more about the fact that the rampant speculation tends to be incredibly wrong, right? It's not, people will speculate about size of weapons and role, and it just doesn't. It doesn't seem to kind of prove anything. We don't seem to get anything. We do have some pictures though from. Well, we'll just watch it. We'll watch the Space Wolf thing from the video. So we'll see that in just a second. So yeah, the Polaris is now the loaner for the Mighty Perseus, 100%. Valk is designed for use in atmosphere. Yeah, or moons certainly, but. Again, I'm not sold on the air shields. The air shields for the Prowler are because it was designed to operate in space to get onto other vessels. So the air shields would make sense, right? Because the side doors will open. There's no airlock, so you would have explosive decompression, which is bad, I'm told, in spaceships. So let's have a look then. IAE show episode 1. We're just going to watch the intro, the talk through stuff, and then we're going to have a look at the quantum questions at the end. But I'm hoping that you should be able to hear most of this. Let's find out.
All right, thank you so much. Welcome to the IAE show. I'm Jared. We're here talking with Rich and John about the future of space combat, spaceship operations in our Persistent Universe game. There's a couple topics we're going to cover, one today and then 2 more as we go. I want to talk about something that is at the core of the entire spaceship experience, and that's time to kill. Now, right now in Star Citizen, as players have known it since 2015, your ship can take a few shots and then it goes, poof, you know, fiery explosion. A very impressive fiery explosion. Shout out to Mike Snowden and his team there. But that's not the experience that we've been building towards. And a lot of the changes that we announced at CitizenCon with insurance and whatnot, these are tied into the future direction of spaceships and life on board spaceships. Talk to me about time to kill. How long are these ships supposed to last? Are they supposed to go up like confetti like they currently do? And what's the vision for space combat supposed to be?
I think the first thing we need to talk about is moving away from time to kill and move towards time to disable. Because in the PU, ships are not always going to explode, but we want you to be in that loop of wanting to own your ship. Loss should matter. We want you to put time and effort into your ship, and that means time and effort into keeping your ship alive, and if something does happen, getting it back.
We've talked about physicalized damage in the past. Is this just a matter of getting that physicalized damage system in, or is there more to it than this?
First off, physicalized damage is tied to our Maelstrom system, which you probably didn't know, but we saw for the first time in action for the Squadron demo. All the ships, for example, in the turret sequence were set up with Maelstrom and using our physicalized damage system. We're moving towards more a physically based system that actually works out the speed of the projectile, the collision, and then generates the force, and that force then dictates the damage that's associated with the ship itself. And what that means is that opens up a whole new area of gameplay for pirates.
Just before we go into that, that's interesting. So we talked about there's going to be a way of it calculating the force that it strikes with and how much damage that does, which is all well and good, but you've got to wonder how that's going to work over network connections and, you know, the latency between client to server to other client and back again, and whether that's going to, you know, there's a point at which things being complicated stops being a good thing, and you know, because it causes too much, there are too many things happening, and you know, they're already talking about in server meshing, oh, there's too many calls for this and there's too much data going. There has to be a point at which point you say, you know, we don't need to be this complicated about something, but you know, I might be wrong. They might have a really simple way of doing it.
Piracy, taking those ships back, repairing, going back to your ship to actually either take it back to your own crafting hangar to be able to dismantle it for resources, or if you're the pirate itself, you can actually take it to the council and get your own ID on there. But ultimately, while we have soft death in the game right now, that's kind of a faked soft death. It's kind of just a slightly move in that direction, but it's not the full physicalized system that we've been working on for a long time. You know, when John says loss matters, it's something we need to start talking about. If I have lost my ship and it does take a long time to get back, how does that impact me if I'm playing the game? What happens if that's my only ship? And I think that's where we need to start thinking about a more complex algorithm to deal with insurance claims and how you get your ship back. And then that directly ties into the TTK or TTD, time to disable, for us to be able to get these ships back. So if you think of, say, starter ships or ships that are small in nature, so like an interceptor or some of our small racing ships, those ships should be, like I said in the 1.0 talk, should always be readily available. So if you lose those ships, we don't really want to punish the player. It needs to be a symbiosis where loss matters and it needs to be impactful to your game experience, but it can't be so impactful that it stops you playing the game. Then it essentially curves up towards the more extreme scenarios. We need to have this almost agile algorithm that basically allows us to work out, like, okay, how many times have you lost your ship in the last hour? Does this player have only one ship on their account? How do we take that into account to make the player experience fair?
Of course, that's the ultimate penalty, loss of your ship. Until that point, we've got features like resource network.
That's kind of interesting. Sorry, Rash says, see that they talked about taking it back to the hammer and pull it apart so salvage gets another added layer, so owning the salvage ship won't be the only way to salvage anymore. Well, I think they're talking about, I think they're talking more about repair, right? Is that, and this goes to the idea of this chop shop that we were talking about on Discord a while ago. Hey Graham, good to see you. Welcome in. One of the things there is the idea that you might be able to pull your wing is damaged or blown off. You might be able to pull that off another ship and put it onto yours. I don't know necessarily that it'll be a different way of salvaging, not in the strictest sense, but yes, the ability to find a ship and go, well, that part is completely intact, so I'm going to take it in case a ship rocks up that needs that part. That may well happen. I don't think it's owning more ships is a downside. I think it's more a case of what they're talking about there is that if you've got only one ship, the game is going to be more forgiving to you, right? Because if you've just started out, you get into a situation you're a little bit over your head. That allows them then to, this algorithm that they're talking about allows them to go, okay, look, new player, one ship, like, you don't need that to explode right now, so we're going to be a little bit more forgiving, and maybe there's a slight kind of percentage thing applied. The flip side of that is they're going to have to be very, very careful with how that applies. Maybe it only applies to PvE, because what you don't need to have happen is to come up against a fully repaired insert name of ship here. Something on the starter, so you come up against a fully repaired, ready-to-go Avenger, identical, twice, and have two very different experiences in terms of that one I got 80 shots on target, that one I had to get 120 shots on target, even though I shot it in the same space. And of course you'll have a little bit like that, because the idea that you can penetrate and damage systems, that's going to change things slightly, but you don't want it to the point where you feel like you fought two completely different ships. You might get that crit that causes the power plant to go critical and it explodes 30 seconds into the fight. That's just going to be like a holy moly, I wasn't expecting that. But that's got to be like a once in a blue moon event. It can't be all the time. It just can't do that.
Which is the beginning of this time to disable, this extending the length and life of your ship to make it so that not only does it not explode right away, but the players, the members aboard the ship, have more opportunities to repair the ship. What is that experience supposed to be like on a single player ship? How do we keep that alive longer to the larger ones?
It's a two-way thing. Obviously, time to kill, time to disable is generally thought about as the aggressor's point of view, but it also matters to the victim of this combat encounter. We can't have it be so quick that you have no chance to do anything about that. So
I think it's probably worth mentioning here as part of the community that, none of this, it should be a shock, right? With Death of a Spaceman and the input of engineering and the ability to repair with internal crew, this was never going to be a game where ships just randomly exploded, unless you're talking about very, very small ships, right? Obviously, repairing a Gladius in the middle of a firefight is a bad idea, because you've got to get out and float around your ship. And in the middle of a firefight, that's a really bad idea. But for ships like, the Freelancer, the Connie, the MSR, those sorts of things, you need that time in that fight to go, right, we've lost a shield generator, we need to repair. Someone gets out of the ship, runs to the shield generator, pulls their repair tool out, gets the panel to slide back, starts to repair it. All of that needs to happen. They can't just randomly explode in the middle of that, because otherwise they've introduced this whole gameplay loop and there was no point. It's just useless. So, none of this should have been a shock to people, and if there are people whinging about it, then, boo-hoo, too bad.
With physical damage and resource network, it moves it away from being a just sort of race to zero on the health. Items will start malfunctioning, forcing that person to make a decision of, am I going to flee? Am I going to deal with this now and take the risk? And then on the flip side, that gives you, as the aggressor, the chance to go, what do I want to do with this disabled ship now? Obviously, single seaters have less room for options in this scenario, but really the bulk of that gameplay is on the larger multi-crew ships, where you'll be moving around inside your ship, repairing, replacing relays. The engineer will be diverting power to different systems, just to sort of give everybody enough time to decide what they want to do in that scenario. And there's there's so many different scenarios that can be done.
Sounds like we're building a progression here. Are the larger ships intended to last longer? They have more lifespan. There's more that you can do to keep them alive. Am I sensing this right? Is there a progression here?
Absolutely.
So Dell's just said, seriously though, the algorithm mentioned here should consider things as death of the ship, length of time it was in use, if the owner has more ships and of what type, etc. Yeah, I think they can just simplify this, right? If you are a fairly new account, or if you're an account with only one ship, then this might apply to you. If you're not, then it probably doesn't need to, right? And I'm not talking about, well, I've got a ship and then I've got like a Pulse and a Ranger. It needs to be ships that you can move around in and that sort of stuff. But it needs to be forgiving. Like, I've got, if people are going, oh, well, I keep picking on new players with a game package and, you know, I'm not killing Mustang Deltas and Auroras anywhere near as fast as I should do, boo-hoo, go pick on someone your own size. But if it's looking at there and going, hey, look, this person has had an account since before 1.0 and has more than one ship on their account, this shouldn't apply to you, full stop. And I don't know if that's how they're going to do it. I'm not saying that's how they're going to do it, but I just think, you know, it needs to be a little bit with us. Once we've died once or twice, we're going to know what this feels like, right? Because I would imagine all that Death of a Spaceman stuff and the rep hits are going to be in before 1.0. We will have lived this. We'll know what it's like. I don't think new players need to be penalized with such a savage system so quickly. Maybe they get like a grace period when they first come into the game where death doesn't matter. Maybe, you know, for any of those things. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to expect. The last thing you need is to build a system so unforgiving that people don't play it. Because, you know, you've only got to look at Tarkov and stuff like that. Tarkov's struggling a little bit at the moment because it is so damn unforgiving. You know, you lose your gear, that's that. And players can bankrupt themselves and not get out of it. So yeah, they've got to be a little bit careful. Distroy says, I see others really complaining about this particular part of the conversation today. It was definitely interesting. Yeah, so this was 2 days ago. This was the first show. But yes, sorry, that's a minor point. But yeah, I think this stuff is important more for new players, less so for, oh, they've only got one ship. You know, if you've been playing for 6 months, you're still on one ship. Just because you're bad, you shouldn't be getting any sort of support. Having said that, that's not how they're describing this. This sounds like it's going to be a permanent system. Although it is a very short segment, so yeah. Dokanobi says, nor do we want player pilots sitting stranded in space for a long time waiting on a pickup without an alternative mode of getting them back in the game. Yeah, I mean, what would be really interesting is, like, when fighters explode, is have that point where it's going to explode, but have like a 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds, like, you know, you see it in Top Gun and stuff, where all the alarms go off, the master alarm, and everything just goes red. And it's like, oh god, and, you know, moments before Dark Star explodes in that incredible, like, atmospheric footage. So it gives the player a skill option for a second to look down, pull the eject handle, and eject out of the exploding ship. Because they're hanging at your mercy, right? But they're out of the fight, they're no longer a threat. You know, that sort of stuff looks to be the way that they're going to go with a lot of this.
I mean, ultimately, you want you to progress in the game and build your fleet, whether that's solo or with a group. You need to be able to have some level of understanding that you're not going to lose it straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other aspect that I think is really important to see about in terms of when you say progression, it's not just progression for the TTK or TTD for across the entire spectrum of the game, or the progression for the player, the victim or the defender, or versus the attacker. When your ship is disabled, there's no way to bring that back. When we have the proper version where your ship components are gone and utilising the physicalised damage, you can bring that ship back. And that's the huge difference. And that opens up this entire gameplay loop where you have towing and repair, and maybe somebody can repair it for you. And that's what, you know, they've opened a nearby shop, so they're a repair shop and they give you good chances to repair versus cheaper prices than taking it to an LZ or a space station. So I think when we talk about progression, especially from my perspective, I want to see progression across all the professions. And
that makes the SRV a much more attractive prospect as a ship. If people are going to benefit greatly from keeping their ship even after its soft death, rather than just, I'll claim it. Maybe there's a cap, when they talked about the crafting, there were levels of the ship. There was, tiers, I think 1 through 5 for parts of the ship. Maybe there's a cap on that, what you get back when it's insured. So salvaging your tier 5 parts is better than just getting tier 3 or tier 4 back from the insurer. That sort of stuff, along with like the weight and the cost and everything else. That sort of stuff will really make ships like the SRV useful. Yeah, and then there's escape pods, and whether or not they're targetable. Obviously, that was seen as quite a dishonorable thing to do in Eve. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that they can do there. Yeah. Sorry. Just.
Hopefully people start to see, and it's the reason why we wanted to talk about 1.0, people start to see how all these things connect together. There's a reason why we did all these things over the last 2 or 3 years. It's not like we were just throwing a dart at the dartboard and hoping that, what feature is next. We had, it's that grand plan about trying to bring them all together. But ultimately, we want to be in a position where we can start to focus and connect all of the gameplay systems. And I think this is a key part of that.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. This TDD, we're going to have to get in the habit of calling it TDD now, doesn't just open up the life of the folks who own these ships in combat. I'm really excited about it opening up, like you said, repair, refueling, rearming, all these things.
Absolutely.
It's like it's your ship hull is still there, even passenger transport. Like, hey, I need to get back to my to my ship, but maybe it's still in a conflict zone and everything, so I need help to get back. There's so many opportunities that increasing the lifespan of these ships gives to the game.
And just to be clear as well.
Yeah, so the Liberator will be really good for that. That will be a good use for it, and that onboard SCU storage will give you the ability to like prep repair materials and that sort of stuff. So you can even be out as like a roadside, planet side, space asteroid side repair. I don't know, whatever you call it, repair system. That'll work really well. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe escape pods automatically take you back to a planet, says Shadow. Yeah, something like that, or some sort of refuge point, or maybe they can still be intercepted, but the question is then, like, how do they do that? Do they do that quantum drive? Because if they do that at kind of max SCM, that might take a while. But yes, absolutely something like that. No, so it's just a measurement rash, right? And in terms like time to disable. In terms of speed, right? Speed is just a number. But how fast you can drive around the corner depends on your car, your skill level, the conditions, all that sort of stuff, right? And it's going to be that same sort of thing. It's time to disable. It's a straight up slugging match with nothing else happening. But on that note, having done phase 3 of Stanton, Save Stanton, we did one of those missions with a Polaris. We got it fully crewed. It was incredible. And we were there with a bunch of other Polarises just slinging every round we had into the Idris, and it just tanked it. So there was loads of times on that ship to be repairing systems and running around and getting stuff back up and running, and dragging people to the med bay and getting them healed up and all that sort of stuff, which is really encouraging for capital ship combat.
Well, on that front, they're not end game professions either.
No.
Every profession in the game should have a starting location, so you can become self-sufficient if you want to play by yourself and you want to try and figure it out on your own. But then you can also engage in the community and be online. So there's definitely avenues that are available to you.
You mentioned the difference between PvE and PvP. So these changes on the surface sound great from a player versus player standpoint, from a player making their life in the verse, but trying to do some of our more basic missions and realizing that, okay, well, this time to disable change, could make some of those missions tedious if it were a...
That's really interesting. So I think this signals a bit of a shift. I'm just reading between the lines here, and of course this might just be choice of words. But Jared said this sounds great from a PvP perspective, and I think it actually that like the idea of the algorithm sounds problematic. Maybe he's not talking about that bit specifically, but if he is, it's talking about PvP more from a new starter perspective than it is about like that top 10% skill level, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think that is a good thing for PvP, because one of the criticisms I've heard regularly leveled at CIG is that they react to that very kind of top tier. A lot of the streamers that do that, sort of like the Avenger 1 crowd, and I'm not singling him out, it's just the one that stands out in my mind. You know, that sort of crowd. If that's the case, that's not a bad move. Because you can't just have the identified pilot's name, oh, I'm going to lose, I give up, right? It's got to be more factors than that. You know, it's got to be, oh, I'm so glad I'm not in that ship because I would have lost, but I'm not. I'm in this ship, so etc., etc.
Applied unevenly across.
There's two things to take into account. One is the fact that if we look at the balance across the entire game right now, and I'm going to say end game, the current end game, because the current end game really kind of finishes with medium ships. We don't really have the large ship gameplay that we want to add. But the current end game is probably too easy, and the current starter position in terms of the balance of these missions is too hard.
Give us some for the PvEers.
And the second thing was for PvP and PvE. So you kind of have this opposite end of the spectrum. You have this end of the spectrum, which is PvE side, where we want you to be the hero. And in that scenario, while we want to have challenging missions where you're going up against a high target bounty who's in a single ship and his ship is really well repaired, but we also want you to be able to go up against 4, 5, 6 ships as an encounter. Where we're going to start balancing that aspect is that those ships will probably be owned by bandits or pirates, and they'll be less well repaired, so they will be easier to kill or easier to disable. So if you talk about the PvE side, I think more ships will end up going critical and blowing up, so that you're not left with just these 5 ships. And it's also part of the economy balance that we don't want you to just constantly be collecting ships. But ultimately we'll have that, we will balance it.
Those big heroic experiences where you feel like a badass killing.
You don't want to be fighting the same 5 things for an hour.
Right.
Exactly.
Disabling them all one by one. You want them all to go.
And then on the PvP side, we want to make sure that, well, even if you're in a starter ship and you're in a starter ship and we go and fight each other, or I'm in a medium ship and you're in a medium ship, we don't want to be in a position where 5 seconds it's gone. But ultimately, I think you're going to get greater enjoyment if you had to work for it and you had to have some level of challenge. And that's where we want to be in a position where we can look at PvE and PvP and we can balance them in a way that gives us the best experience for both of those players. And I think this comes back to what I said at CitizenCon. We genuinely want to strive that everybody who wants to play Star Citizen, that there is a role in the verse for those players, and that they have something that they want to work towards and achieve. And ultimately, if they're going to, spend their free time, we have a duty to make sure that we are providing fun for those players.
All right, so
that's a really nice idea, and I don't know if anyone else, what I'm hearing there is very much similar to the idea of the PvP slider. It's that when you're fighting PvE, you get to feel a little bit more like you do in the single player. You're going to save the world. PvP, it becomes a lot more skill-based and a lot less algorithm-based. And I don't think that's a bad place to be. Like they said at CitizenCon, they're building games for PvP, PvE, and for that player who doesn't want to interact with other people at all. And it has to work on all of those scales. So you have to offer them all. The danger comes if you get it wrong. So if you make people feel like they're PvPing when they're PvEing, or it makes it feel, it makes it as easy as PvE when you're PvPing. Yeah.
So thank you guys so much. That's time to kill or time to disable.
So that's that bit, and then we are going to have
next,
a look
we're gonna
at quantum questions.
And begin. Who are you and what do you do?
My name's Ben Curtis, and I am Vehicle and Weapons Art Director at CIG.
Are you any good at it?
I hope so. I'll let our backers decide.
Jeffrey's tubes, yay or nay?
100% yes.
Good.
Why did the Polaris get so many new guns?
Because you want capital ships to be able to destroy things. But no, really, it just got PDCs.
Speaking of PDCs, are other ships going to get them now that they've arrived with the Polaris?
Yeah, we've added them to some existing ships already, and anything kind of capital ship and larger should get them.
Does that include the 890 jump?
Correct, yes.
Are you happy with the Polaris?
Very happy.
Tell us one of the ships from that CitizenCon tease of the next 12 months.
The Perseus.
Woohoo!
Can you tell us
Perseus.
another?
No.
Why don't we make more variants of existing vehicles?
I think when it comes to variants, it's a balance of backlog ships, new ships that we want to try and do, and then kind of variants, and it's just really getting them slotted in together.
That's a really interesting. That's a really interesting take. So it's about where they slot in, because there could be an argument that it's not quite right with the Terrapin Medic, because it's, you know, the Terrapin at the moment is $220, so let's say give or take $20 either side, and then at $240, you've got the Medivac Triage, or sorry, the Medivac Triage, the Apollo Triage, right? Which has all these modular beds, and it can have, you know, tier 3s, tier 2s, tier 1s, multiple of. They're very, very close together. So that would be a good example maybe of where variants are becoming a little bit compressed and need to be spread out a bit more.
If you could make a new variant of an existing vehicle right now, what would it be?
A bounty hunter cutter.
Oh, nice. What will be the next variant of an existing vehicle?
Super.
Super Hornet.
Oh. Retaliator modules. Which
Yes.
one are coming next?
Probably the dropship and habitations aspect.
What was
Yes,
your
sir.
favorite temporary internal name for a ship or vehicle that never made it to the public?
We've come up with a code name, and all I'll say is you've got to catch them all.
Yeah. Will the Connie get a Mark V after seeing how cool the Zeus
Ash,
is?
this is for you.
Probably not a Mark V, but it will get an update.
Okay. Caterpillar
So yeah. So after the Zeus, the Connie 5 will get an update. So at some point, that's going to happen.
modules. Give us something tangible. What are we thinking?
I
Doesn't
think
sound like it's
we've
gonna
obviously
work.
got cargo at the moment. I think there's lots of opportunities. We could do exotic cargo. We could do, I know everyone wants a mini carrier or that sort of, you know, mini ship. Med base, lots of opportunities.
Okay. Carrick blast shields?
Yes, in 4.0.
Carrick blast shields. And cargo doors.
Carrick cargo doors?
In 4.0.
Oh, let me try to squeeze one more in. What is the next manufacturer to get a focus after everyone frees up from the Polaris?
We're still on RSI, but we're also pushing on to larger MISC ships and Drake ships.
And what's the deal with the long dash of the Starlancer?
It's a subjective choice, and I thought it was really cool, and some people don't.
All right, let's find.
So yeah, so that's that. Yeah, so oh, hang on, I didn't mean to do that. For some reason, we've tried all the wrong things now. Oops, sorry about that. I've just clicked the wrong thing twice. Oh well, we started off with the sound not working, and then we got to, you know, clicking the wrong things, and I give up. I give up. You know what I mean? So yeah. There you go. Got there in the end, didn't I? Oh dear. So yes. So yeah. Yeah, a couple of interesting points in there. Mainly, obviously, the key takeaway is Perseus is coming next year. Woohoo! So, got to make most of the Polaris in my inventory while I have it. But then again, you know, if that means that I have to give it up for the Perseus, I am more than willing to do so. Okay, so let's have a look at the IAE show episode 2. There's a couple of points in here that I want to pick up, including some stuff about Fleet Command, which, you know, it might be, hopefully, something that I'm pretty good at, question mark?
Craft and vehicles in the verse. Today's topic, Capital Combat, with Rich Tyra, John Crew and Jared Huckabee. Stay tuned, it's the IAE show and it starts right now.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming back. We're here for part 2 of our discussion on the life of spaceships in Star Citizen. I want to follow up on something, Rich, that you kind of hinted at in part 1. You mentioned the Squadron 42 demo several times and this experience that was being built at. It's not just a cinematic thing for the start of the show. It's actually seems to be reflective of this capital warfare experience that we're attempting to build here. So I want to ask you outright, how is capital warfare supposed to work? What are we building towards, and why should folks be excited?
I think the first thing to sort of approach is it shouldn't just be the same gameplay as small ships, just scaled up. It needs to be, we talked about progression, it should be a progression of gameplay. So you can't just turn up, lob 50 torpedoes at a ship, press the I win button and go on. You've got to remove those defenses layer by layer. So capital ships have multiple defense. Obviously they have turrets on them for shooting ships. They also have PDCs for disabling closer targets such as missiles and torpedoes, and then they have physicalized shield emitters, which is what you saw in the demo where Cal Mason sort of kites a Vandal ship into it. So you need to take all those things out in progression to stand a chance against a capital ship.
So it's not just a brute force thing. I know a lot of folks are imagining just coming in with an A2 and dropping a Moab on top of an Idris or something like this. It sounds like there's a puzzle to be solved here. Is that how you would say it, Rich?
Ultimately, capital ship warfare should be a puzzle that you have to figure out. If you actually watch that cinematic for the Squadron demo, you'll notice that one of the lines is, "Hey Cal, I don't think your weapons are large enough to be able to take out that shield emitter, or that shield Jenny, as they say." And he says, "You may be right." And that is actually true. You shouldn't be able to turn up with small ships and small caliber weapons against a huge capital ship. And it's what we touched on in part 1 in terms of the physicalized nature of the damage. If I fire a small caliber pistol at tank, it's not going to do much. The reason why we have like an Ares or a Retaliator is to allow you to soften up the capital ship shield so that you can actually then get access to the shield emitters and the PDCs and the weapons that are actually keeping your fighters away. And the way that the shield faces work is that they're underpinned.
Just before we go into the shield faces bit, that's really interesting, the idea of layered defense, and also something that we've been talking about for a while, especially on the Discord, and if you're not in, links in the fold, the idea that certain grades of weapon are not going to be able to penetrate certain armor or certain shields. You know, the fact that it just won't work at certain comparison levels. So that's really interesting. That sets the capital ships aside, and I'm sure elicits more tears from the "I should be able to kill everything in my single seat."
And the PDCs and the weapons that are actually keeping your fighters away. And the way that the shield faces work is that they're underpinned by physicalized shield emitters, which are then connected to the core shield generator, or in large capital ships might have multiple shield generators. So ultimately, your first foray should be like, okay, which shield face are we going to try and soften up and dampen to weaken it, to be able to then send in our a squad of fighters to be able to target certain shield emitters, another squad to be able to target the PDCs, or in case if you're taking a much larger ship, like a Javelin size, which will have flax. So you'll have to basically figure out, okay, this group or this squadron will take on this squadron will take on this, and this is where the hologlobe comes in terms of you're the admiral of the fleet, you're going, okay, right, I'm assigning you this target, and then if you're a fighter, you're going to then receive markers. And then obviously you're going to be connected to be able to say, okay, go now, I want you to attack now, because you need to have a coordinated alpha strike. If you just drip feed your damage over time, the capital ship will just be able to absorb it. So
there's so much to unpack there, but I really like it, the idea that you're going to take on a facing. As Napo says, it's very much like Battlefield Gothic, or if you've watched it, it's Battlestar Galactica, except instead of armor, you're chipping away at the shields. And you're knocking those shields down with capital ship weapons and big, as he says, alpha strike weapons. And then when they're down far enough, or they've been negated, the fighters and that are there then to damage the emitter and the generators, so you can't regenerate them. So now everything that hits that ship from that point on is now damaging, you know, the ship and the stuff itself. And as Ras says, we kind of saw that within the thing itself. So yeah, that's quite an interesting way to go about big ship combat. What I really like there as well is he said that as a fighter, you will be receiving markers from your fleet command. So you'll be, I would imagine, assigned to squadron, and from a fleet command perspective, it might work a little bit like a real-time strategy in that you're selecting a group of fighters or whatever, and then you're assigning a target, and that puts the waypoint on their HUD. So you can see, like, you can click on a group of fighters that you haven't dealt with in ages and go, okay, well, what are you assigned to do? No, I need you off that to do this other thing. It also, really interestingly, kind of illustrates to us what the role of the hammerhead, right? Because on that side, you remember in the Squadron 42 thing, you had Bishop talking to McLaren saying you need to come in near us and clean up some fighters that are on us, right? Same thing with the hammerhead. So when those shields are going down and the fighters are all there trying to pick at your shield emitters and your generators, that's when the hammerhead comes in to clean them up and keep them off and allow those shields to kind of reform and recharge. So that's the hammerhead's role right there, is keeping those fighters off, is identifying sensitive ships, sensitive aspects of larger ships, and keeping the fighters away and presenting that extra little bit of threat, as well as all the PDCs and the turrets on that ship. You've now got a hammerhead to deal with, which is designed to smash fighters and knock them into the middle of next week.
This is where you need to be able to go, okay, what's my tactics, what's my high-level strategy? And then once you've taken out the PDCs and you've taken down a shield phase, that's when you've got essentially two options. One option will be to board, so you'll be able to then use our hacking gameplay, and then obviously you'll have to fight your way through to the bridge to be able to take over it. Or the other side is then you just, if your mission is to just destroy this ship, if you've taken down those layers of defenses like John says, that's where you then send in the torpedoes. So capital ship gameplay is again planned to utilize all the different roles of the different ships that we've made over the years, and it should be a significant challenge to be able to take out one of those larger ships.
Let's paint a picture here. What's one capital engagement supposed to be?
Well, let's just use save the Idris event,
okay,
if you want to go through.
Yeah, so realistically, when you're coming up to it, first thing you should be doing is scanning it so you know what you're going up against. You want to do a scan on it to work out where are its shield emitters, so then you can then plan, like, we want to take the right-hand side shield emitter down, so we'll mark that as a target, give it to that group.
You might be sending in a Terrapin or a forward ship to be able to get scan data that then relays that back to you on the Polaris and your hologlobe, to be able to go, okay, now I've got some information to work with, how do I then approach it from there?
Yeah, because one capital versus another capital is probably the worst scenario if it's literally two single capital. They need.
What I really like there is that statement of of capitals on their own are not the optimal. They need the attendant fleets, and that bodes really well for where they're taking this combat, because capital ships on their own, they are weak to certain threats, right? In exactly the same way that modern warships don't excel in every single situation. Just because they're a warship and they're big and they're covered in guns doesn't mean they can just take everything on. And there are certain situations tactically where warships will just choose to use their speed rather than everything else to get away from a situation, to just get out of there. So yeah, it's really encouraging to hear them say that, because then it shows that hopefully there's a place for looking at what's being talked about in chat, ships like the Terrapin, the Sentinel with its e-warfare capability, all that sort of stuff, the Hammerhead, the Perseus, assisting with that angled shield takedown or shield facing takedown. There's lots of stuff in there that I think is going to work really well. For ship combat.
Their fleets to reach their maximum potential, so you should be bringing these support ships with you. So yeah, you've scanned it, you've identified your point where you're going to be attacking, you assign a group of fighters from your ship or from your fleet, take away their fighters, try and attack their turrets, and then you run another group to sort of bring down those shield emitters. The majority of them will be under the skin, so you need to scan to find their locations and then target them specifically.
Using ADS.
Damage penetration.
Or precision targeting, as we should say.
So again, things like the 2 starfighters are great for this role. So you have the Inferno, the ballistics will penetrate through and damage it. The Iron, great to bring the shields down to allow those ballistics to go even easier to the hull.
You've got to take out PDCs as well.
Yep, PDCs as well.
So the PDCs won't just attack missiles and torpedoes, they will also attack other small objects. And so we need to make sure that you've created a safe zone or an entryway and you're punched through those defences, and then you've got your options of either boarding or destruction, depending on what your objective is.
Sounds like something ideal for a light fighter, just taking down the PDCs.
Absolutely, like light fighter, heavy fighter, but you won't just be able to penetrate the shields on a capital ship because they'd be so heavy. So you'll need to use relevant weapon rate. That's where really the capital ship main weapons come in, because they're the ones.
So yeah, loads to talk about there, and just going to pick up a couple of bits on chat. Monster says, I mean, the RTS overheavy works for base building, but with space, I don't know how well you'd be able to do that kind of stuff. A general instructional tagging enemies, POI maybe, but I don't know. So what I think they'll probably do is they'll group ships together. So in the same way that you would drag click a bunch of units and control one, and then now assign to group one, you might be able to assign groups and then have ships and then just have a list of them. So you go, okay, you hear Bishop ordering the Javelin forward, and then another ship in to support them. You might just be able to do that, and you just ship support ship, and it's just like a radial menu of orders. So there's whole bunches of things that you can do there, but we know that they're already talking about fleet command modules. Or I say already, the fleet command modules in the original stretch goals from way back when in 2012. So there's going to be something for this. In terms of how the interface looks, I mean, I can tell you how I want it to work. It's completely impractical because it doesn't solve any of the problems that you're talking about or give you any control at all. But I want the fleet command module to have that almost like Ender's Game version of like being able to put your VR headset on and then having your game space set up and being able to just zoom out and walk around the fleet and walk around the battle and almost like detach and just look at what's going on. And of course you'll only see what's in your sphere of influence and what you're aware of, but that would just, I mean, there would be a nerdgasm of epic proportions. But something like that would be really, really cool. But yes, the ability to just assign stuff, and then, when you discover that gold group and blue group are down to a couple ships each, you can just consolidate them. And there's a voice line when that happens. You are now assigned to gold group. You are now assigned to blue group. And then you send the orders, and that's that. If you even need to know that at all. So yeah, I imagine there'll be fighter squadrons set up. Yeah, so you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to group ships together, I would imagine, and just you'll be able to manage that yourself, and you'll be able to give them names and stuff. That'll be kind of like cool. You're talking like the alien ships on Babylon 5. So Babylon 5 is a series that I didn't watch. I didn't get into it. So yeah, I know I probably just committed streamer suicide there. Oh, sorry, unaliving. But yeah, oops. So there's that. Oh well. Demonetized again. I do that at least once on a stream, and I'm only drinking Diet Coke.
Ones that are actually doing the main damage on the shields to be able to soften it up to allow their fighters and support ships. You can't just roll up and just try and out DPS it. I mean, you can, but you're rolling the dice. Is my ship, capital ship, going to be better than your capital ship? Am I going to be able to maneuver it well? Because that's the one thing to discuss about shield emitters. Right now, you have a shield generator that kind of creates a bubble, and we say, okay, this is this face, right face, left wing. And if you look at the wing, if you shoot the wing from the front and it hits the front of the wing, we just automatically work out like, okay, is that the front face or is that the left face? And for the player, that's not super obvious. So you want to be in understanding like, okay, well, the shield actually hugs the ship. So we need to know, well, actually, that's the left face. So you as a player can go, right, that's what we're targeting, that's what we need to bring down, because otherwise these shield generators are so powerful on capital ships, they'll just be coming back.
And throughout all of that, we've sort of assumed that the target ship is just sat there,
Absolutely.
You have the opposite, like you're on the ship.
The
you can
defender
see-
is spinning the ship
Yeah.
around, trying to put trying to put their stronger side towards the attack.
We're seeing all
Exactly.
this fire coming to this side, so you're now trying to maneuver yourself to avoid that. Counter players, they're trying to take out your thrusters to stop you maneuvering, so it is a big puzzle.
So shields down, PDC is cleared. And that's where this can go from a ship versus ship to a combined arms thing, which is really what's most exciting to me. This idea that you now have to send troops over to breach, and board the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also you might have to defend against being boarded. So if you're going up against another player and they've got a Polaris and you've got a Polaris, or when we add the Idris into the game and you're coming up, then you're going to have different mixes of gameplay when you're fighting over whether it's resources, station warfare, all the things that we've discussed previously. We've not really got to end game yet. We're still really at mid game. End game is fleet battles and being able to utilize these large ships, and then that comes back to TTD if you do lose, or you need salvage, or you need repair, or you need to rescue the people that are still on the ship. These types of battles, these types of combat add and are underpinned by so much more gameplay than what we've just discussed today. And I think that
what I love is like when you look at, I'm going to go pull the video up in a minute, but when you look at the way that the Squadron 42 battle was put together, right? The King ship fires its beam weapon and cuts the back end off of the Bengal battleship variant, right? Achilles or whatever it was, Ajax, I can't remember. It's something in with A. Cuts the back end off, and what seems to be a throwaway line is, Mark Strong goes, all available support ships go to pick up survivors. And that, it seems like a throwaway line, but it's not. They're alluding to all of this gameplay. And when you look at everything in Squadron 42, that demo, that opening sequence, seems to be aimed completely at hinting what is available in Star Citizen. Everything is hinting at everything, right? You've got the medical stuff, you've got the EVA stuff, you've got the debris floating in space getting damaged by things, which hints at salvage. You've got the rescue side, you've got the comm side, the fleet command side. It's very, very clever how they put that together and how it all seems to fit, and just signal stuff. And I hope that is intentional, and I believe that it is, right? I believe that they're doing this on purpose, that this whole thing is just now hinting at how it's all going to come together. But that idea of going rescuing ships, maybe that makes the Cuddy red because it's a search and rescue, not a medical ship, not strictly a medical ship, so it's search and rescue. So maybe that's what the searchlight does. It helps you find casualties so you can go and rescue them on a ship when they can't talk to you because the ship's out of power. And all of that stuff, like it's so cool, that sort of thing. The Medivac with its drones to go pick up pilots that have, ejected, or to pick up crew members, like the crew member of us. If in that Squadron 42 demo, you missed the jump, bounced off a piece of debris, and just skidded off into the back end of Beyond, those sort of pods could locate you, bring you back, and now you can replace casualties on active ships. Very, very, very cool. So yeah, an alt named Nelson for the capital battle, said Del Hanobi, get in line. Yours will have to be Colonial Nelson, because I got Nelson covered. Also have to contend with the captain self-destructing the ship to avoid capture. Yeah, I think from what they're saying in terms of that sort of stuff, and bearing in mind we don't know how self-destruct is going to work alongside the whole insurance. Does it void it? Are you doing that? Is that a genuinely, you're not going to have that ship again? And so on and so on. I don't know if that's going to be possible. All sounds nice as Scott, but it's easier said than done. It's going to be extremely difficult to achieve dynamic moment-to-moment gameplay with time to kills long enough to allow this decision-making. Well, I mean, it's already in. Right? Watching the Idris tank as many Polarises and other ships that were there fighting it on Friday night when we did our op, that thing just face tanked, and it had no shields at that point. It just face tanked everything we threw at it. That was a long old fight, to the point where I actually started thinking, all right, this is going on a bit now, but more than enough time to run around that ship, repair stuff, consider what it is that you want to do. It's quite clear that fleet composition, putting things together, as someone highlighted earlier, like I think it was Shadow Girl, things like mantises and stuff that's going to stop you escaping, your fleet composition is going to be vital into how you get into this. Having all of a sudden the Scorpius Antares makes a lot of sense. Heavy fighter with the ability to stop people running away from you, yeah. Keep that in the hangar until towards the end of the fight. When it's clear that the tide is turning in your favour, you then put the Antares up, trigger the device, stop people getting away. It's really, really interesting.
That's where it starts to connect the loops.
All right, so that's just a little bit about Capital Warfare. Thank you so much for sharing. Our viewers are going to be incredibly excited about that. The Polaris obviously makes its debut at this year's IAE, and while these systems are still in development and will continue to come out in 2025 and beyond.
Thing, shall we? The Fat Fury, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly a mirage ship, as if it wasn't obvious from the outside.
Amazing. Up next, an old...
Interesting. So yeah, some good-looking shots. I'm going to see if I can find something of that allows us to see images of it. Let's find out. I'm just going to click through. If someone wants to find a really good moment, then that works too. But yeah. But that one worked, and I've just clicked off it. God damn. So yeah, interesting. Single seat, it looks like from there, unless there's some other kind of seat elsewhere. But those guns are some sizable bits of kit. Yeah, an interesting layout. It doesn't look like there's anything else there that I can see on the top of it. But yeah. Lots of... yeah, music is nostalgic, John. You're absolutely right. Have you not, Citizen Scott? Yeah, this looks really, really good. I must admit, we were looking at my fleet, which I might do in a video or a stream at some point, as to where I am at the moment and what I've done with it during IAE. Although I would imagine the answer to that is not a lot. But one of the things I've identified at the moment is that I don't have a fighter. So I've got a starter salvage ship, and I've got a couple of other things that I can use. I've got like a starter rescue, I've got the C8R. I don't have a starter fighter at the minute. And especially now the loners have been changed. Like, I think I've still got the Gladiator, and I've got the Buccaneer for some weird reason. But yeah, supposed to have size 5 guns. That doesn't surprise me, looking at the size of those guns on the side there, John. But yeah, it is a very sexy looking ship, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't say it was taking too long, Citizen Scott. I said it felt at a moment like maybe this is taking a while. But that's because, of course, going into fights, we're used to everything ending very, very quickly. I don't really have a problem with things taking longer. Bearing in mind as well, like, gladiuses, arrows, sabers are stripping the shields down on an Idris. And bearing in mind what we've just had, that's not going to happen. So if you rock up to that fight with nothing but, sabers and arrows and gladiuses, you're not winning because you can't get through the shields. Maybe a couple of missiles will get through, but then again, with the PDCs. So I genuinely think, just based on that, the fact that half these systems aren't in and we're already seeing that sort of stuff. Also, the other thing is that we yeeted torpedoes at this thing like there was no tomorrow. But the PDCs were still active. We hadn't stripped them out. So it just shot every torpedo we had out of the sky. Which we weren't playing it the way they're talking about. We weren't stripping down the layers of defense. We were doing what we'd done up until that point, which is take the biggest bit of ordnance you've got, yeet it at something, press the I win button. And all of a sudden with these PDCs, that's not happening anymore. And it's the, So I'm pretty sure you could be quicker at doing that if you do it the right way round. You turn up the ships that can hit. That fight will be very different. Although the Save Stanton event doesn't look like it's going to be repeated, they might just keep elements in other events. But, things like, the Perseus is going to make that a very different fight. It doesn't have the immediate high alpha output that the Polaris does if its torpedoes hit, but those size 7s just chipping away the whole time and just hammering a target will cause that kind of higher consistent damage compared to the quad size 4s and then the anti-fighter stuff on the front. It's got the chin size 6s, but the ammo at the moment isn't there for that to do a lot of damage, as we found out because we ran out of ammo for our chin turret, or we broke it when our torpedoes exploded. One of the two. I can't remember, right? The other thing, interestingly, going into the repair, so we had twice had an issue where the torpedoes didn't get far enough out of the tube because we were too close to our target to get away from us before they were engaged by the PDCs. So the explosion they caused actually knocked us back, stripped the front shields down completely, and sent the front of the ship red. And I'm pretty sure if that had happened twice with the front shields down, we would have exploded. Luckily enough, we survived. But when it came to refilling the torps were 270k because we'd fired them all. Repairing the Polaris, bearing in mind it was the bridge and the kind of neck section of the Polaris, they were the only bits that were red. The repair cost, anyone want to hazard a guess? Don't say if you were there. Anyone else want to hazard a guess what that repair cost was for the Polaris? 1.6 million credits. Which talks about the the whole issue of that. So what I will say about it is that about having that many people, having all the turrets manned. We had the missile turret, the rear turret, the chin, both side anti-fighter turrets, the top cannons. We had someone at the torpedo thing. We had people in all of the chairs on the bridge apart from the captain's chair. It was incredible, right? We had this whole ship manned, and our mission initially was going to go and board it, but there was so much going on we didn't bother. And when it was soft death, there was no way to board it because the interior seemed to disappear. But a couple of them have been boarded, so don't know. Something's gone on there. Maybe the interior just bugs out. Don't know. But what I will say is it's really good fun coordinating that sort of gameplay and everyone getting in and ready and everyone set to their med beds and getting everyone into those turrets. That's just really, really good fun. I'm very hopeful for big ship combat. It's gonna be interesting to see that progress. But I'm really interested to see what we can do with the Perseus when the Perseus comes out. We will be testing an awful lot. It's going to be good. You have to board it before soft death, from my experience, as can. Yeah, 100%. So, PDCs are now targetable in precision mode, exactly that. So you get through the shields, you then get close enough to take the PDCs out, you then back up enough that the explosions from the torps don't damage you. But again, that's a lot of stages to go through, and if it's got an attendant fleet, then that's going to become harder and harder and harder. And especially when you put human players in an Idris, keeping one side to your opponent, keeping the front side on and hitting stuff with the railgun, and then when you've lost that, turning side on and using the turrets to work until your front shields have recharged and so on and so on. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see that that evolve and work. So yeah, I'm really impressed with where that is going. I've just lost the battery on my watch. Okay. So what I am going to do, just because I'm a little bit of a masochist, is I'm going to go and see if I can get the game loaded up for the Intrepid. But meanwhile, any questions and whatever else we can have a chat through. I just want to see if I can get that running on stream. I'm sure it won't. I'm sure it's going to do its normal slideshow stuff. But in the meantime, we'll cover all that sort of stuff. So yeah, Gowan, good evening. Good to see you. Yes, it was incredibly good fun. And I have one in my hangar right now. So if you want to look around it, then you can do. For those that want to look round, our very own Shadow Girl in chat did a video. I will post it in just a second if someone could send me the link to it, or I can have a look myself. But she did a walk round on her stream of the Polaris. If you want to have a look, that's fine. If you're around afterwards, I can also take you around and we can have a look. We shall see. Bear with me just a second. I'm just going to boot the game up and see if we can get there. Oh, excuse me. Ooh, allergic to work. That's what it is. Ooh. Okay, there we go. So have a watch of that one. That's Shadow Girl's walk around the Polaris. She'll take you around and show you what she thinks. Really in-depth look and worth a watch. So yeah. Ras says, I don't think it was that long. We did take a long time to kill because we didn't use the torps properly after the PDCs were down. Yeah, there was one moment where we were closing in from about 11k and we were already at SCM just in case it got a lucky shot off with its railgun. We narrowly dodged it at one point. I wasn't really paying attention. And yeah, we got 2 salvos of 4 torps off, and just as we're going in, just watching these torps arc in, because they didn't seem to take a straight line. They seemed to kind of go up and then come back down again, in this beautiful kind of arc. It was a moment to behold. I think we were all kind of giving it a woohoo moment. Can we go around and take a look at the Perseus? Rash, as soon as that happens, I will be the first one to take a look at the Perseus. I promise, my friend. The Perseus currently has torps and a hangar. Interesting. But yes. Oh, did I say Perseus? Is that what I said? Sorry. Perseus has torps anyway. They're only size 5s, but it does have torps. So yeah. Let's have a look. I'm just going to very quickly see if we can watch the. Let's see if I can find this on. Thank you for sending me the link, Scarlett. Appreciate that. Let's have a look. Oh, is that one the? Let's have a look. You crashed at one point, didn't you? Yeah, I'll have a look. Sorry, I can't find the point on that. But yeah. Okay. Oh. Well, wherever I was in the game before, apparently I died. So yeah, we'll give that a miss. Let's have a look. Yeah. If you haven't had a chance to give the Safe Stands and Missions a go, every Friday night from 9 p.m. UK time on the Discord channel, link in the fold, we will take you there and go do that stuff. If there's not a dynamic event on, then we go and find something else to do. But you're more than welcome to come in, hang out, even lurk if you want to. We'll just get you done through these kind of bits of missions, and it's kind of good fun to do so. But yeah. I think, is there a starting around 4 hours 30? Let's have a look. This is kind of top level content. This, while I'm clicking through because I haven't sorted my crap out. Oh no, is that? I think you might have left your model up on the screen during that combat scene, but that's fine. We can have a look at your kind of combat as we go. Let's have a look. Click. Let's have a look. There's that. I'm going to flip back over in just a moment. Stand by. Okay, transition. I feel like I'm kind of covering up the rude bit here. But yeah. So let's give it a bit of volume.
Needs to be repaired then.
Yeah, the hammerheads are too close for me to lock the torps on.
Yeah, a lot of obviously lag and stuff when this was going on initially, and a lot of not being able to, not see what you're firing and stuff like that. So you're firing, but you're not seeing the lasers go out and land and hit and get all the impacts. But it is a lot of fun. It was a really, really good fight. And like I said, that moment where we're coming in, it was already fighting like 3 Polaris. I think they'd all expended their torps. Just watching these 8 go in was really, really good fun. And then, people calling out, you need to chin up, chin down, move left, move right to keep all the arcs on was really good fun. And that sort of gameplay. You can imagine once damage comes in and then we've got engineers running around the ship and trying to keep stuff repaired, that's going to be a really, really fun gameplay loop for everyone to be involved in. And I'm really quite looking forward to how that all plays out. And then you get this really kind of, if you fire a torp too close, the PDCs kick in and the ship just goes mad. Because you get like the explosive backwash hit the front and knock you out, knock you backward. But yeah. Hey, Regan, good to see you. Yeah, so that huge explosion and all the damage now on the front of the Polaris was actually caused by our own torpedo. So yeah. Yeah, Regan, we had a look earlier on when the video from this goes up. We talked through both of the kind of talks and the questions from the first one from the last 2 IAE shows, so it might be worth having a look at. But yeah, really good points and big ship combat moving in a positive way. Um, yeah, lots of fun. Yeah, the whole the whole having torps blow up in your face, definitely not advisable. Yeah, so the Polaris is a loner for Perseus. It's a loner for a lot of the big ships at the moment, and I would recommend getting your hands on it and having a walk around if you haven't already. If you want to, I can do that after the stream in Discord. But yeah, it's definitely worth taking a look at. Yeah, so this is there's no streaming PC involved in this, just like there's no streaming PC involved in mine. So what you're seeing is stripped down from what it was playing. It was a lot healthier than this in the actual video, but yeah, or in the actual gameplay rather. Yes, Scott. Yeah, it's not released today. It looks like it's going to be a 4.0 release ship. It didn't come out today, but it's very, very clearly Mirai. So yeah, those torps going in like that, it's just incredible. It looks so good, and then that was the PDC stopping it. Yeah. Well, they called it Space Wolf. I don't know whether that's what they actually called it or whether that's just because they did an Airwolf ripoff. Maybe both, but no. Again, those salvos look incredible. The danger here is, of course, because you're following the torps in, you can actually end up getting hit by their own. But as you can see there, the PDC is being massively effective, and that's what it means by layers, right? And that's why this fight took ages for us, was that we weren't taking this systematically. We weren't. Oh, that's right. You had a glitch here, didn't you? I think. So yeah, we weren't necessarily. There we go. So we had a problem with a couple of the ships, and we went on to look, and this is what the Idris looks like when you are in there. All this footage taken from Shadow Girl stream. But yeah, it's an interesting. It was a really interesting fight to watch have happen, and you know, now we've got, as I think John Goodwin pointed out, and as Shadow Girl pointed out to us on the day, taking the salvage guns and having, kind of whatever it is, RCM in them, and using the reverse mode to put armor back onto ships can reduce the cost of repairs and such. So it's definitely worth doing. Yeah, that one was really, really cool. Just so much fun. We've got 2 more of those to do. I might try and capture some on a recording and put it together in a video. I don't know. We'll have to see how it's performing. Obviously, server performance is a little bit balked when during IAE anyway. So what you'll tend to find is that it doesn't affect the event in and of itself. What it does is it affects the it affects whether or not the mission is actually working. So sometimes when it's completed, it bugs out and you don't get it again. So you'll go to a server and it will have the mission, but you won't be able to find the ship. You'll go to the location, there'll be nothing there. Same with loads of other missions of the same type. Hopefully that clears up after IAE. But we've done one. You've got to do this 3 times. Gonna give it another couple of goes. If I can get that video up, I will do. I know it's been a while, guys, but you know what's going on you know, in my private life. So, you know, there's been a couple of things I've had to deal with. But the CitizenCon video is in the works. I've got the first few minutes absolutely down pat the way I wanted them to. The rest of it is going to follow very, very quickly. I will have that out next week. I promise. Well worth a watch. Because it's not so much about what was said at IAE. It's about at CitizenCon. It's about the experience. It's about what, you know, what it's like to go and why we go. And okay, there's a little bit in there about this is what I really like about you know, these are the top bits of information that I got from it, but the majority of it is you know, hopefully a fresh take for you, so it'll be well worth a watch. There'll be a Fleet Builder video in the works, and a couple of special things. Also, keep an eye out on your short 60-second sit reps are coming. The first one is out, it's the biomes, but they are top bits of news distilled down into a 60-second short video, so you don't have to read or watch for hours. You can get that news very, very quickly through your phone, and of course the entire series will be there in a playlist for you to watch back at your whim to understand the latest news and happenings in Star Citizen and at Cloud Imperium Games. So yeah, that's the plan. Hopefully that will be you know, enough for everyone to be getting on with. I will be not so much now, Scott, because again, the problem I have is I don't have a streaming PC set up. I just have my PC, and it really doesn't seem to like trying to do both. Yeah, you might get a fan noise for a bit. Give me a second. So that should have fixed it. Hopefully. But let's find out, eh? Ta-da! Okay, cool. So yeah, illiteracy. Wait, what am I doing? AV? Wait, what am I doing? What am I doing? Cool. So yeah, looking forward to getting that stuff out to you guys. And again, special project in the works. I'll let you know when that lands. But yeah, that'll all be good. As I said, if you want to go and see a couple of these ships, I'll be doing it in the Discord after the stream. You know, the link's in there. Come and have a look. It will be good to see you. You've been watching Drinkers with Gaming Problems. Thank you very much for stopping by. I'll see you soon.